to "Nothing ever happens in Canada," but we know this is simply not true. I'm Canadian Girl. Thanks for joining me today. How is everyone's New Year going? Are you sticking to your goals? Did you even make any? Me? I'm focused on making this podcast the best it can be. I've gone from recording on my phone, hiding upstairs in an unused bedroom under a large piece of bed foam for a sound shield. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but I'm sure you can picture it. Not very high tech, but I made it work. Now here we are in 2019 with a brand new mic, an office to record in, and I'm learning to edit on my own. I've even tested out those skills on the preview for this episode. That way Mr. Canadian Girl can have a break once in a while. But enough about me. You're all here for the Big Bang today, and I don't blame you. It's quite a good tale indeed. Adjust your headphones so they are just right. If you're in a dwelling or a vehicle, make sure your windows are open, and preferably, I hope you are sitting at least 3 miles away, because we're about to visit the biggest peacetime non-nuclear explosion in the world that destroyed the underwater mountain known as Ripple Rock in Seymour Narrows.
On its snout, that great long snorkel that sticks out there is a 25-inch lens, and that'll pretty well put Ripple Rock right smack in the middle of your living room when it goes up or out or sideways or whatever it's going to do in 2 minutes and 15 seconds right now.
Ripple Rock was an underwater mountain that had 2 peaks located in Seymour Narrows, which was 200 kilometers northwest of Vancouver. One peak was 9 feet and the other one was 21 feet below the water surface at low tide. This was a mariner's worst nightmare. Famous explorer to the area and namesake George Vancouver described the dangerous area as one of the most vile stretches of water in the world. Right here in Canada. Can you believe that? The dangers of hitting the peak or the swirling waters caused by tidal currents interacting with the underwater mountain, let alone the many horrible tales of what happened along this passage when ships did not abide by the water's strict guidelines, rang enough fear into passing ships that they would often wait until slack tide to cross. This is when the waters are most calm, as currents have become still. This often caused many traffic jams in the area, delaying many passengers and commodities moving through the channel located between Vancouver Island and the mainland. The Discovery Passage of BC, where Ripple Rock lurked beneath the surface, is part of a very important marine trade route from Vancouver to the northern coastal points and allowing access to the U.S. The nearest town is Campbell River, found on the east side of Vancouver and the south end of Discovery Passage. It has a population of about 35,000 people and is considered to be the salmon capital of the world. Ripple Rock would first be described by Captain Richards in 1860 in a local newspaper as a mariner's warning to all when passing through the area. Later on that same year, engineers would come up with a plan to link Vancouver Island and the mainland using the recently reported peak. They planned to start out from Butte Inlet and use the 2 peaks as pilings for the bridge in the middle before connecting over to the island. In the end, the plan was scrapped and seen by most as structurally impossible to complete and maintain as a functioning bridge in the future. The focus then shifted to blowing it up so no more havoc could be caused by the menacing underwater mountain. It had taken over 100 lives, about a dozen ships, and hundreds of small vessels over the years that were recorded. The first ship to fall prey to Ripple Rock that we know about was the Saranac. In 1875, she was heading north to Alaska. Once the boat collided with the peaks, the current would continue to suck the damaged ship out to deeper waters, leaving almost no hope of recovering from a hit. Seymour Narrows is about 400 feet deep, and the south peak of Ripple Rock would rest only 9 feet below the water surface at low tide. To put it into perspective, from a Canadian point of view, if you have ever been snowboarding or skiing in Ontario at Blue Mountain, this little underwater beast is only about a little over half the size of that. I honestly found this quite shocking, as when I was doing my research, I was picturing this underwater rock to be much bigger. Not that I am any way underestimating its power. Just thought that was an interesting side note. The two peaks stood only about 100 feet apart. This left only one side which boats could pass through, as the other side was much too narrow. Also, adding to traffic in the area, as only one ship could pass at a time. Millions of dollars would be lost by ships waiting for the only 2 times a day for the 20 to 40 minute window when it was safe to pass at slack tide. Ships were often pulled sideways across into the peaks due to the sudden changes in unpredictable tidal currents. Whirlpool-like waves in the areas were created, and those currents could run more than 10 knots at a time, about 13 kilometers if you're like me and don't know knots. Let's be honest, you truly never ever knew when it was safe to cross here. On Tuesday, July 4th, in 1911, the Prince Rupert Journal would report a headline, "Passenger steamer hits in Seymour Narrows and has to be beached." A passenger steamer known as the Spokane left Seattle, Washington late Wednesday, June the 28th in the evening with 149 passengers and 61 crew members aboard. At 11 p.m. Thursday evening, she would strike a rock at the entrance of Seymour Narrows, which punctured a large hole near the starboard side and the bow. This is the right and the front of the vessel. The boat was rushed onto the beach of Plumbers Bay, where an evaluation of the passengers and the damages began. The passengers would be rescued by the Admiral Sampson vessel that would take them on southward to be reboarded on other ships to finish their journey. As early as 1931, records show the Marine Commission had recommended the removal of Ripple Rock to the government. She became famous around the world for her stories of havoc and woe, earning her titles such as Old Rip and the Devil Beneath the Sea. Various groups over many years would lobby against the government to do something about Ripple Rock. She was the most hostile piece of water to navigate in North America, and the maritime and local communities had had enough of her destructive and interruptive ways. In 1943, the first attempt to take down Ripple Rock would begin. A huge barge and drill rig are sent out to drill into the peaks and place explosives, but the current was so strong that inch-thick steel cables securing the barge to the bottom of the sea floor continuously broke, making the attempt impossible, and the crew had to throw in the towel. The same method would be used again in 1945. I'm not sure why they thought this would work again, but anyway. The tidal currents in the passage again would prove to be too strong, and the entire plan would be forgotten. They would immediately begin to search for a new plan to remove Ripple Rock. But how? Ripple Rock would remain untouchable until the 1950s, when the government would look into the project again due to public pressures. In 1953, the National Research Council of Canada commissioned a study of the planting of explosive charges underneath the peaks by drilling vertical and horizontal shafts from Maud Island, roughly about 2,000 feet. 2 years later, the Northern Construction Company, J.W. Stewart Limited, and the Boyles Brothers Drilling Company were all granted the contracts to complete the project. We're finally going to blow up Ripple Rock. The tunnels would begin to be built in November of 1955. 3 shifts of 75 men split up over rotating hours would begin to build a 500-foot vertical shaft from Maud Island to the ocean floor, then 2,300 feet horizontal to the base of Ripple Rock. The tunnels were 6 feet wide and 7 feet high. Next, 2 main vertical tunnels, one up each peak of the underwater beast, where coyote shafts would be drilled for explosives. Basically, a whole bunch of smaller tunnels with explosives scattered all over as if coyotes had dropped things all over the tunnels. On April 3rd, 1958, the Coastal News newspaper headline read, "Ripple Rock Blast Set for Saturday." It also described Ripple Rock as a 2-headed monster lurking in coastal waters of BC. Fun fact, the same newspaper, there is an ad for a full-course Easter dinner at Danny's for $1.85. Now that's a great deal, Danny's. I'm sure it was delicious. Almost 1,300 metric tons of explosives such as ammonium chloride, paraffin wax, and many more that I'm not going to butcher the pronunciation of, were placed in the tunnels, estimated to be about 10 times what would be needed if the explosion were to be happening above water. Careful monitoring was done by the fishery department, and they noted 5 orcas swimming south towards the blast site, a school of porpoises, 2 sea lions, and 1 fur seal that were all within the 3-mile radius moments before the explosion. Side note, don't worry, they were all noted to be unharmed after the explosion. UK scientists would even get their hands in on the explosion as well. The Atomic Weapons Research Establishment from Aldermaston sent a delegation to Canada to set up various monitoring instruments to record and collect data from the explosion. RCMP officers would clear the area for 3 miles before the blast. People within 10 miles of the blast site were asked to open their windows to prevent the possibility of them shattering due to pressure changes in the air. The engineers and the TV crews were all stationed in a bunker in order to maintain a view on the explosion. This event would become one of the first events to be broadcast live on Canadian television across the country. At the time, a television in one's home was mostly a new thing, and this was exciting TV.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
So that was a video from BC History on YouTube. I know it wasn't the best sound quality, just wanted to include you and what it was like to be there that day and witness the explosion. 27 months later, after the construction project began, on April 5th, 1958, at 9:31 a.m., more than 600,000 tons of rock and seawater blast into the air over 1,000 feet in just seconds, making it the largest non-nuclear peacetime explosion in history, right here in Canada. The most amazing thing? That most people heard or felt nothing at all in the surrounding areas, as the water concealed the damaging effects of the explosion to all around. The sound was only heard at all in a very small area, very close to the blast site. The official announcement would not be made until 2:45 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, allowing enough time for all the scientists to confirm their findings that Ripple Rock had indeed been destroyed this time. Just like that, Ripple Rock was no more. The next few days, papers in the area quickly posted photos of ships passing through Seymour Narrows, carefree and at all times of day. Since that day, not one ship has floundered in the area. Jagged and broken rock can still be seen beneath the surface in slack waters by one's eye. After the explosion, the South Peak, that used to only be 9 feet below the water's surface, sits 45 feet. The North Peak, which was once 21 feet, now sits 70 feet below the water's surface. This is considered to be an engineering marvel to this day. The Coastal News newspaper on April 10, 1958, would report within 30 minutes of the blast, 5 boats entered the area to assess the damage. 3 from the Protection Branch and 2 from the Fisheries and Research Board. They did a comprehensive search of the blast site and the adjacent bays. They reported the destruction to the fish population was much smaller than expected. Less than 100 deceased fish were found within 3 miles of the blast site, mostly types of cod, and only 2 deceased diving birds related to the heron family were found. The 5 orcas that were seen earlier were spotted again moving north away from the blast site and seemed to all be in good condition. The 2 sea lions, 1 fur seal, and school of porpoises were also all observed within the 3-mile radius and were reported to be doing just fine after the blast. Today, the channel is mostly used by cruise ships, fishing boats, and tugs pulling logs. In 2008, the town of Campbell River celebrated the 50th anniversary of the blast with a commemorative blast done by Vancouver Special Effects Company that took place at 9:31 a.m. on April 5, 2008. There is a hiking trail on Vancouver Island that starts just north of Campbell River and treks about 4 kilometers up to the lookout overlooking the Narrows, where Ripple Rock still stands, just a lot shorter now. To locate the hike, there is a marked trailhead and a parking lot off of Highway 19. If you are in the area and you do get a chance to go on this amazing hike, please send me pictures. I would love to see them. A word of caution. Recently, in the summer of 2017, reports of the mythical Sasquatch were being made so frequently in the area that the BC Ministry of Forest, Lands, and Natural Resource Operations actually had to post a sign in the area alerting people to its presence and asking them not to feed it. You can actually see a picture of one of the signs online on Yelp. When you look up the Ripple Rock hike lookout reviews and pictures, of course I will include a link below. It is pretty neat. We did it! We blew up Ripple Rock for good. I hope you had a good seat for the show, and if you didn't, I hope you at least got to watch it on live TV, because it was quite the event to see. Well, that was certainly a good old Canadian tale, and we definitely got to start this year off with a bang. A tale that I had never actually heard before. Mr. Canadian Girl had actually recommended this one, so a big thank you to him for that. If you have any stories you'd like me to look at, please let me know. You can contact me on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the handle @nothingcanada, or you can email me at canadiangirl2319@gmail.com. Until next time, my friends, you never know what could happen in Canada. I'm Canadian Girl. I just wanted to give a podcast recommendation that I just recently bumped into on Twitter called Cascadia. If you haven't heard of them like me, because I was living under Ripple Rock, do head over to their channel, as they are your show for your Northwest American history, and they even have a few Canadian tales too. You will not be disappointed. I recently just listened to their one about the cursed gold of Pitt Lake, episode 7. You can find them on most podcast apps, but of course, like always, I will include their link in my show notes below. And to you guys who always chill with me to the very, very end, you already know, you're the best kind of people that we all need more of in our lives. Until next time, my friends, if you are in Canada like me, keep your slippers close, hot chocolate brewing, and stay cozy. And if you're on the other side of the world where it's warm right now, you better be outside enjoying it for us. I'm Canadian Girl. Until next time. Want to help support the show? You can do that in 3 simple ways. The first one, you can leave us a shiny 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. This small gesture means so much to this podcast as it allows us to move around on the podcast charts and meet more awesome listeners like you. The second, you can stop by our souvenir shop and pick up a souvenir from one of our great adventures and take it on your very own. There's t-shirts, water bottles, notebooks, and so much more. Do head over to our souvenir shop today and grab some adventure gear. And finally, the third way you can help support the show is by donation. We have a fancy PayPal button that can be found on the top right of our webpage, nothingcanada.com. This button allows you the option to donate as much as you want, whenever you want. All donations will be used for the channel by buying new books for research, paying for the podcast website, and upgrading equipment. All 3 links to help support the show, of course, can be found in the show notes below. I thank you all so much for your support of the show. It means the world to me.